Good evening, Azeroth, and welcome to episode 162 of the World of Goldcraft. As usual, I'm your host, the Lazy Goldmaker of thelazygoldmaker.com. And we're back recording live this week, which is nice. That also means that anyone watching in Twitch chat can post your questions in chat, and I'll answer some of them at the end if we get any. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about a post I stumbled across on Reddit. So we're gonna talk a little bit about some slow markets. Someone is having trouble in some slow market. Before we go into that, I have to say that this podcast is made available by my patrons that, amongst other things, can get access to all of the stuff I post at thelazygoldmaker.com 7 days ahead of time. So if you're interested in joining us, you can do so at patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker. So, the nature of slow markets. There was a post on WoW Economy this week that was very interesting. It got a lot of traction as well. This was posted by someone who had apparently been watching a lot of YouTubers to get into gold making, and they had been doing a lot of transmog farming. Now, I'm sure this is an area where there's a lot of clickbaity YouTube titles, because there are a lot of super rare old transmog that are extremely expensive. And those were mentioned in the post, stuff like the Papal Fess. And he was having a lot of issues selling his items. They just weren't selling for the prices they were having in their market value. You can check out the full post, but the gist of it is that if you get a Papal Fess after 100 Uldaman runs, it will take you 6 months to sell, and you'll maybe sell it for half of the market value or 1/3 of it. And that's the point. Obviously, we're not going to go too much into the prices, because transmog prices on any given realm for a super rare item can be manipulated. So you can't necessarily trust that. And then he also talks about greens are not worth selling, because it's just better to vendor them, because you'll spend so much time cancelling and re-auctioning, and that's true. And he's just saying people say it's a slow market, but it's actually worse than that. Now, I generally agree with him. I don't do transmog. I don't do transmog farming. There's a reason why I don't do it. It's extremely slow. And the necessary time investment to be successful is quite high. And it's higher than I'm personally willing to pay. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk a little bit about how these slower markets in WoW work. And what type of strategies you can do there, or what you can do instead, what my preferred approach is. Now, in general, the slower markets in WoW are all going to be cosmetic markets. All cosmetic markets are generally slow, so that means mounts, it means battle pets, it means transmog. All of these things, relatively speaking, sell quite slowly. And items that move fast, that's items that increase player power. So that's gear. Gear for alts, bags, consumables, all of that stuff. Those generally sell really fast. Enchants and gems and stuff like that. And there are some things you need to be aware of, or should be aware of, when it comes to cosmetic markets in WoW. The first thing is obvious. There's just an absolutely incredible number of different cosmetic items, because we have all of the backlog of, I don't know how many expansions we're up to now. 9 expansions worth of items, of transmog, of pets. There's thousands, literally thousands of items, thousands of gear pieces, hundreds of battle pets. There's not that many tradable mounts, but there's a good number of tradable mounts. So any one item is, just by the nature of there being so many different items, that can potentially fill that need of, that's what I personally think looks cool. So they're all gonna have very small demand. Of course, taste is also subjective, so players may not agree on which cosmetic items are the coolest or the most desirable. But they are gonna agree on what's the most rare ones. So they're not gonna agree on that, because it doesn't matter if they agree on it. It's just a hard truth. Like the Papal Fess is an extremely rare item. And that's where most of the super expensive transmog pieces in the game are super expensive, because they are very rare. Not because they are necessarily extremely cool, but because they are extremely rare and very hard to get. And that means for some of those items mentioned in the post that are extremely expensive, they are selling to an incredibly small market. There's a very small market of very, very hardcore collectors who would care about that item and would even consider buying it. So even finding someone who's willing to buy it, that's going to take a long time. And then someone who's willing to buy it at a very high price, that's going to take even longer. And that's the case. They are just so rare. That's why they're so expensive. The market at those expensive prices is tiny. Now, if you were selling them for 25k, it'd probably be a bigger market. But at that point, like, it's definitely not worth farming for it at those price points. So that's just the nature of very, very expensive cosmetic items, is that most of them who are super, super expensive are very expensive because they are rare, not because they are necessarily desirable. But it's because the seller can set the price at whatever they want to value their time at. Now, what this means is that if you want to have consistent sales in cosmetic markets, you have to go wide. You need a lot of different items. Because the 100k plus items, they're going to sell once every month, once every second month, once every third month, you'll sell something in that price range. Where you're going to make gold is on items you'll sell in much larger quantities, stuff that can sell on a week in, week out basis, and that's going to be items in the 3 to 10,000 gold range. That's typically a range where a lot of players are willing to spend some gold on cosmetics in that price range. So you need a lot of items up for sale at any one time, and that's obviously where the drawback of deposit costs, sheer number of items, the time required to get all of those from the mailbox, run them back to the auction house and repost them. I was doing a good bit of crafted transmog in these price ranges, but I stopped doing it because it just took me so much time and it just wasn't worth the effort. So the only transmog gear that I've done over the last year is Island Expedition gear, and I've done pretty well with that. But outside of that, I don't really do transmog anymore. I don't find it worth my time. I am doing another cosmetic market though. I am doing battle pets. And battle pets has some nice advantages over transmog. Number one, you can move your items around. You can move battle pets around by just putting them in the pet journal and then caging them on another realm. And that's really, really good for flipping. You can buy a lot of them when they're cheap on one realm, and then you can move them to another realm and start selling them for more right away. The deposit costs are also pretty much negligible. And then on top of that, battle pets have a little bit of a performance element because they're battle pets. You can actually use them for something. I don't personally know how much that impacts pricing because I don't know which battle pets are more useful than the others. I just look at their prices. I don't know anything about battle pets. I don't play battle pets. But I know that my approach works. But it's overall, all of these things makes it easier to go ultra wide, and you'll generally sell a little bit more battle pets on a weekly basis than transmog. If you post 100 battle pets, you'll probably sell more pets, a larger number of pets on average per post scan than if you post 100 pieces of transmog in the same price range. And that's why I have worked my up. I probably post somewhere in the 1,000 pets total across 14 realms, and I consistently get at least some sales every time I post my pets. But I do have a lot of pets available for sale, and it's half a year between the times I sell super expensive ones like TCG battle pets and stuff like that. And all of this is why I don't think any of the cosmetic markets are good entry-level markets. If you're just new to gold making, you shouldn't be in cosmetic markets in general. They sell slowly, you need a huge amount of inventory to make any significant gold. You don't get to learn from your mistakes because they take so long to figure out if something is a mistake or not, because everything sells so incredibly slowly. So if you're starting out, you should focus on current expansion stuff. You should focus on stuff that's relevant to your player power, because they sell incredibly fast. They have so much more demand. There's so much more demand for getting a strong character in the current expansion than there is for cosmetics. So obviously that means you're facing stiffer competition, so you might be forced into more cancel scanning, but you will be getting more sales. You will be getting a lot more sales. It's just a truth. Like World of Warcraft, at least in my head, is primarily a game about improving your character. That's a significant part of the game, at least. So that's the most important thing to be able to spend your gold on for most players, is improving their character's performance. And this was proven recently with Mage Towers. And people were spending hundreds of thousands of gold getting a optimized gear set to get the Mage Tower challenges done. So it's a proven strategy. It works. If you can cater to player increasing power or increasing player power, you're going to get a lot more sales than if you focus on cosmetics. So that's why I put 90% of my effort into current content markets. And I've been doing that for years. I've been doing that since Legion, at least. And even before that, I don't really remember, because I wasn't doing that much gold making or that actively. But I've been focusing almost exclusively on current content markets. And the ones I personally focus on is crafted catch-up gear, which was the honorable or the combatant gear in BFA, and now the crafter's mark gear in Shadowlands, as well as high-end gear, which in Legion and BFA that meant BOE flipping, which was incredibly profitable in those two expansions, and it's meant legendaries in Shadowlands, and that's been incredibly incredibly expensive and of course incredibly profitable. When power is on the line, the gold is just flowing. All the expansion markets should be a supplement, and now there are people who are making absolutely obscene amounts just doing all the expansion cosmetic markets. Absolutely. For readers of the WoW Economy subreddit, they might remember a recent post by Kchak EU, who's active on every realm on EU, and he's selling tons of transmog. And then, of course, there are people like Vadis, who I learned battle pet flipping from, or I took his ideas that he's posted about and implemented my own version of his setup pretty much. And he's making millions upon millions primarily from battle pet flipping. So it definitely works, but if you want to do it, you have to go extremely wide. These people have gone absolutely incredibly wide in their markets. They have a huge number of items, huge numbers of realms. And that does require a lot of time to maintain. Personally, I find that I think for most players, you're probably better off putting that time and effort into current expansion crafting, or flipping if there are flipping markets. There haven't been good current expansion flipping markets in Shadowlands, so it's the crafting markets that have been the best ones in my opinion this expansion. And putting your effort there is just going to be better than doing transmog. So that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about. Now I can see we already have one question here from Elliot. That's on the same in the same theme, so we'll take that. Do you think transmog items have a future? A good portion of people who want the stuff could have bought it already. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of people. Most of the people who really care about transmog bought a lot of old transmog. The moment they added the collection system where you could learn transmog. Because for those of us who are old, we might remember the system before then where you had to actually keep the gear to be able to transmog it. You had to have that item lying around in a bag or void storage somewhere. And then they added the collection system, and that was like a transmog bonanza where everyone was buying transmog to get it unlocked. And since then, yes, for old transmog, probably demand is just gonna be very low, because most of the people who have played for a long time will have the transmog they want or care about from old expansions and primarily need new transmog. So there might be a lot more gold in focusing on new transmog and flipping and farming new transmog than old items that have been in the game for a very long time. That's definitely possible. I'm not sure. I'm not a huge transmog. I don't focus on transmog. But I have made tons of gold with Island Expedition gear, so if you can identify similar stuff, items that drop a lot of in Shadowlands and that are useful for transmog purposes that people will eventually stop farming, that's definitely something to pay attention to. That might be able to generate a lot of gold once we get a little while into the next expansion, for instance, after Shadowlands. And some people that didn't play much during Shadowlands perhaps are coming back and they realize that, oh, there's some cool stuff from Shadowlands that I want to add to my collection. we could see something similar to what happened with Island Expedition gear, which was prices increasing by 10-20 times what I paid for some of these pieces. I've made a lot of gold with Island Expedition transmog gear, where I bought a good chunk of it at the end of BFA, because I realized that people wouldn't be doing Island Expeditions in Shadowlands, so all the items that dropped there would go up in value. So that's gonna be it for me this week. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you do, make sure you like and subscribe to the video, and support the channel on Patreon if you're interested in that. And with that, I wish you all a very profitable week, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.